Base game. Okay, from this side, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about negative side?
Yes.
Now, the timekeeper welcomes the first affirmative construct speech within 8 minutes. The first affirmative speaker, please.
Sorry. May I start?
Sure.
Thank you. Observation. The pay system in Japan and what the standards should be like. 1. The bubble economy has burst in Japan. 2. Since then, the Japanese economy has been depressed. 3. Also, management of companies has been depressed. Order 09 core. After the bursting of the bubble economy, company profits have declined drastically because economic growth has been slow. Moreover, at the same time, the rise in net average of workers has led to the increase of total labor cost for companies, and the management of companies has been aggravated. Unquote. Fourth, Japanese companies have been introducing the pay system based on performance-based evaluation. Labor and Welfare, Ministry of Labor and Welfare. The right code. In recent years, Japanese companies have introduced performance-based evaluation pay system while maintaining some recognition of an employee's age and length of one's service. One's performance now comprises an increasing portion of the equation that determines one's annual wages. Unquote. 5. After production, work will be evaluated based on position, performance, and person. We call this system 3P concept, Institution of Human Capital Solution 09 core. Results are value, which is produced or which is in the process of producing. In 3P concept, which IHCS advocates, position is dirty and raw. Performance is the result of a short-term work divided in terms and process. And these position and performance are practically carried by person. The remuneration according to 3 determinants. 1. Does one's performance meet expectations? 2. Rate of positions expected a constant result of work. Process of creating value in short term and the result or performance. And 3. Person as one's lateral uncle. Plan. The Japanese government should encourage companies to introduce equal pay for equal work. Mandate 1. Shall take a broad definition of equal work. 2. Shall evaluate work with position, performance, and person. 3. Shall encourage companies to minimize wage discrimination. 4th. Necessary adjustments shall be taken. Advantage. Performance-based pay system makes problems. A upon inherency, dissatisfaction, and no challenge on work. 1. The pay system based on results has problems. IHCS 09 core. A major fault of the result-oriented pay system in Japan is that the evaluation is based solely on performance and ignores the idea of position. Unquote. 2. The result-oriented system is equal to the norm-oriented. So, same source code. By ignoring the idea of position, in almost all cases, the result-oriented becomes norm-oriented, which only considers result with a process. Unquote. Thus, now in Japan, companies pay workers based on the result of their work. 3. Under the normal orientation, a superior pushes his work onto a subordinate, and that employee feels dissatisfaction because his salary is unreasonable for evaluation of his work. Same source code. In other words, a superior who evaluates his main work should work with a high sense of responsibility, as his large salary calls for. However, a manager staff, when in the role as a superior, might escape his norm or be irresponsible and push his work onto a subordinate for completion. And so the subordinate did difficult and worthy work, he was not paid accordingly. Unquote. And therefore, such cases happen because there is no standard to evaluate work. Same source code. Moreover, as former parliament for no evaluation standard of one's objective is both worthy and difficult, or for existence of lots of superior who can appropriate evaluate his or her subordinates. The men can't have bonus every time they set difficult objectives. So they manage to smooth things over for the moment and never challenge to take a risk. Unquote. 5. Without proper evaluations, worker won't be motivated because wages don't meet the demand that the job requires, based upon the impact. The bad cycle of motivation done and slower business. 1. Workers have dissatisfaction because their work is not evaluated appropriately. Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, (ECHO), according to an investigation into actual conditions of people who have changed their jobs. The main reason for job change are complaints about the company's future, the substance of work, the wage expected among younger workers, and work conditions. On the other hand, reasons that older workers resign are that they are dissatisfied with the relationship and evaluation of their ability and performance. 2. Because of dissatisfaction, workers lose their motivation to work. Same source code. Concerning management change in companies, there seems to be a tendency for middle-aged workers to feel a lack of motivation in their work. Their main complaints are about evaluation and wages. The companies need to review the job evaluation properly and to take action for people who hope to continue their jobs with satisfaction at wage and evaluation. 3. Decreasing motivation to work decreases productivity. 横塚08項 decreasing motivation of working naturally leads productivity down. 4th, moreover, the management of companies is not good. Cross-supply observation, third argument. 5. Poor conditions at companies tend to contribute to workers losing their motivation. This poor motivation then creates further poor conditions and the situation becomes worse. There always exists the possibility of falling into bad cycle. The slump of company growth leads to the decrease of labor motivation and the decrease of training opportunity, and this prevents companies from keeping human resources. And then company growth is stagnated even more. 6. Companies lay off workers because company finances are very tight. 7. Restructuring people's life becomes hard, and some of them commit crime or suicide. Choose upon intervention. To minimize inappropriate wage difference. 1. After plan, because the wage is decided with proper evaluation, workers will be satisfied and gain their motivation. As a result, the profit of companies will increase. 2. As the company's profit increases, the company will be eager to employ more workers and try to gain even more profit. 3. Therefore, there will be less jobless people. 4th, the overall impact will be improved. And then I'll show that's all.
Time is up. Cross-examination from negative side.
So I wanted to talk about what the 3 P's were. Okay, so the first one is position, and then the second one is productivity.
No, not productivity. Thank you. The 3P is firstly performance, that's the result of the work or something. And then next is the position. Position is such as the manager or worker or so. That means role or responsibility or something. Then third is the person, the personal lateral or something. Okay.
Companies already make decisions about how much to pay people and how to promote people right now, right?
Yes.
And what exactly is wrong with that right now? Because they have to make these evaluations already, right?
Yeah.
So why do we need a formalized structure for evaluating all companies when every company already does this sort of evaluation internally because they have to set a pay scale?
Okay, I'll answer. This plan, please look at this plan. This is the Japanese government should encourage. What is encourage? The encourage means not to force them. That means the company can have the choice to choose to take the 3P concept or not.
So what incentive is there for government or companies to do this? How are you encouraging?
Now, in Japan, the 3P concept is not general. Now the general is norm-oriented, I said before.
So let's say I'm an owner of a business and I employ 1,000 people and a third of them are temporary dispatch workers. And implementing your plan of the 3Ps would require me to pay them a significant amount of money. Why would I do that for my company?
That means, as I said before, that the company manager have the choice. So we don't force them to take suddenly. Step by step, in one section and two section, and at last three in the future, the company all, I think.
Why would a company do this? It seems to me that this would dramatically increase their labor costs because they have to pay temporary and dispatch workers a lot more money.
That's it. Okay. As I said before, the company has a choice. So company can turn down the 3P concept and this plan. So but step by step, if the one section is not the company, the step is too important.
What if no company does your plan? Do you then not solve for suicide and employment then?
Please say one more, please.
I don't think any company will do your plan, so how do you solve for anything?
Sorry to say, but time is up. Preparation time for negative.
Okay, for a quick roadmap, you are going to need 3 new pieces of paper, and then we will go through case in order. Is everybody ready? Good?
Yep.
All right, cool. Our very first argument is inherency. The thesis to this position is that when you look to their observation card, their fourth card, it says that this performance-based plan many companies are already using. Then when you look to plan text, and they don't specify any mechanism for encouragement, just saying that the Japanese government says that you should do this, our argument here is plan is effectively going on right now, and that's going to be bad. So subpoint A is plan is already in effect for the reasons I just gave. Subpoint B are the standards. First is education. We think running a non-inherent plan is very bad for education because we don't learn about new possibilities or discuss them in an open debate. Instead, we talk about things that have already occurred, and we're not using our critical thinking skills to evaluate potential policies. Our next argument is predictability. We think running a non-inherent plan is bad for debate because it's not predictable for us. Normally, they get to choose from any number of policies that haven't occurred. There's no way we would ever be able to prepare for all the policies that have never occurred and all the policies that are occurring right now. Subpoint C are the voters. Very first, we don't think the affirmative has met its prima facie burden in order to meet the stock issues of this debate, and that's why they should lose because of inherency. But our next argument here is we think it's bad for competitive equity, that if they can run any non-inherent plan anytime they want, then we would have a very difficult time debating against that. Your next piece of paper is topicality, on the word encourage. Subpoint A. We think encourage means to provide incentives. And then subpoint B, when you look at their plan text, you notice that they're not encouraging anything. They're not providing any incentives. Their plan text is quite literally, I wish I had it. Here we go. Their plan text is that they, the Japanese government should encourage companies to introduce equal pay for equal work. Then they mandate that they shall take a broad definition of equal work, shall evaluate work with position, performance, and person, shall encourage companies to minimize wage discrimination, and necessary adjustments shall be taken. Notice nowhere in there do they actually describe a mechanism to encourage, and they even mention mandate. They're not encouraging anything. Subpoint C are the standards. Our very first standard is ground. We think in a world where they're non-topical, they're taking away a lot of the ground that we would have, such as counterplan ground. Our next argument is predictability. If you're not encouraging anything, we lose all of the predictable links on disadvantage stemming off the word encourage. That's fine. Subpoint D are going to be the voters. Our first voter is induction. We think if the plan text does not inductively prove the resolution true, then you can never vote for plan. But our next argument here is competitive equity. We think in a world where they can run non-topical plan texts, that it skews us out of the entire debate. Now to the disadvantage. Subpoint A is the uniqueness. The Japanese economy is recovering right now, and business and consumer confidence is increasing, but government support is critical to the turnaround. This is from The Economist, May 23, 2009. Markets responded with a shrug, however, partly because there are glimmers of a turnaround. Figures on May 19th revealed that industrial production in March rose by 1.6% from a month earlier. Consumer spirits have also improved. The Consumer Confidence Index jumped to 32.4 in April, having increased every month since December's trough of 26.2. Many economists believe the April-June quarter may produce a small recovery, which could gain momentum in the second half of the year. The first pillar of support is government fiscal stimulus, which could amount to about 5% of the GDP this year. Subpoint B is the link. The plan will increase labor costs at companies by immediately raising workers' pay. This sudden move will destroy business confidence and consumer confidence. Subpoint C. Low business confidence causes businesses to invest less and lay people off, which will worsen the economic crisis. When the economic crisis worsens, then all of the impacts they're talking about, such as managers being depressed, workers being depressed, only increases. This disadvantage effectively turns all of case. And let's talk about case. Right now, I'm making arguments next to plan text. I don't know where you will flow them, maybe by the observations. Our first argument is that there's no solvency here, because the affirmative even concedes in the cross-X that there's no necessary reason that some companies will actually take this once the plan is in effect. Our next argument is that there's no solvency because companies would never want to adopt it because it would only because it would cost them so much more, and when they don't provide any encouragement to offset those costs, they would not do it. Our next argument is that there's no solvency here because there isn't a standard to measure performance. How do you measure one manager versus another when they have two entirely different jobs? Okay, I'm on advantage 1 now. Our first argument is a turn, that adopting plan is going to increase discrimination because companies can randomly start paying people a lot less because they would say you're quote-unquote not performing as well. Our next argument is going to be a turn, that there's going to be an increase in poverty because paychecks will become very, very irregular. Workers won't know how much they're going to make on a month-to-month basis, and that means they can't predict where to spend their money or how to spend their money, which means it could be very bad for them. Our next argument is a turn. There's going to be a decreased performance because people are going to be worried about keeping their jobs or paying the rent that month. Our next argument is going to be a turn. There's going to be a decrease in company cohesion because employees are constantly going to be looking over their shoulders at other employees to see who's performing more. Notice if there's only a finite amount of work, then you won't be able to keep up with your monthly paychecks. Our next argument here is, and if there's decreased cohesion, our argument is always going to be a decreased productivity. In a world where there's decreased productivity, more companies will go bankrupt. Our next argument here is a non-unique. Their impacts effectively say that the management is depressed and workers are depressed. But they don't have any impacts in a world where the economy is pretty bad, right? The management is depressed right now, and the workers are depressed right now. They're not avoiding this. It's not working at all, and many people are upset and disappointed and stressed, and there are a lot of reasons for this, including, in addition to just pay, such as, if the company will survive, if they are still going to have a job, and all of these things. Thus, for those reasons, we ask that you negate. Thank you.
Cross-examination from a party side.
This is the disadvantage. You want the T and the inherency shells? I didn't write much down, so if you can gather what you want. We just did that there. I don't know what this is the disadvantage. That's the uniqueness, the link, and the impact. This is the topicality, and this is the inherency. But yeah, I didn't write. I'm sorry. If you want me to write some things down, that's fine.
Firstly, you said the topicality. The topicality is encouraged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The encourage. What you change the meaning of encourage?
I'm sorry.
What did you change the meaning of encourage?
Our argument is the meaning of encourage is to provide an incentive. So in this case, in order to be topical, the Japanese government would have to provide a specific incentive to companies who adopt your plan, such as a tax break or, I don't know, they could do anything.
And you said we should show the mechanism of 3P or something on mandate with the resolution and no plan.
Yeah, you should. You should describe how the Japanese government is going to provide incentives, not mandate.
However, I think, oh, I think that if we firstly this is a debating game, and that means we should take the affirmative plan mandate to debate. So firstly, we take the first step. That I think this is the common sense for me. Maybe.
Okay.
And so we don't have the version of showing the how to take. So I think. But do you think? What do you think?
If I understand the question correctly, I think you're absolutely right that this is a game and that you should have a plan text, but I think the plan text needs to stem from the resolution, and part of that means you offer incentives.
That in the other word, you want to say we should show the solvency also?
Yeah, I think you need to get solvency from a specific plank of plan that describes how you are going to encourage.
I see. Okay, thank you. And then, talent. And you showed how many talent did you show?
How many? I think I have 4 turns. Yeah, that like decreased performance because people are worried about their jobs. Oh, decreased or increased discrimination because companies will randomly pay people what they want. Increased poverty because people paychecks become irregular, like they don't know how much they're going to make each month. And decreased cohesion because employees are constantly going to be looking around at other employees to see what they're doing and try to like match up to whatever random standard is around.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to say, but time is up. Preparation for the affirmative.
Please stop counting. Now I'll show my roadmap. First, locality, and then case side. In this order. May I start? Okay. First, as for turnaround, they said encourage means provide something, but we show that counter definition of encourage comes from Dictionary of Contemporary English from Longman Dictionary. 3. To make something more likely to exist, happen, or develop. So we encourage to exist a new pay system to exist in this society, and so there will be more choice for pay system, and more the wider choice will be made company try to get wider choice will be good for to choose things. And then please go to case site. I'll show and I'll explain in some of the reason why as for mandate 1, we said broader definition of equal work is good. And for that I'll show some evidence. 1. We can define equal work in various ways, but if we use a specific definition, the scope of the law may be restricted. International Labor Organization, Journal Quote. As can be seen from the review below, national legislations use different definition to establish the scope of a comparison between work and men and women. The same work, equal work, work of equal value, work of equal or equivalent value, work of a similar nature. These concepts do not have the same legal meaning, and therefore the scope of the law may be restricted by the definition used, unquote. And 2, broader definition is needed for any serious treatment of the question of wage discrimination. Same source above. Quote, in the spirit of Convention number 100, the meaning goes beyond the reference to identical or similar work. It takes into account the value of work carried out by men and women workers. The adoption of a broader definition in line with the Convention is an indispensable condition for any serious treatment of the question of wage discrimination, unquote. 3. The countries which have a restricted definition could have removed part of the discrimination. Same source. Quote, thus countries which have adopted a restricted definition, similar work and equal work respectively, have acted by removing part of the discrimination from the scope of action by the public authorities in order to resolve such discrimination, unquote. 4. However, countries which have a broader definition could have achieved better results. Same source quote. On the other hand, countries which have opted for a broader definition in compliance with the provisions of the Convention work for equal value within the scope of a wider approach which aims at overcoming all sources of gender inequality. This in the areas of education, training, conditions of work, etc. seem to have achieved better result, unquote. So, as taking broader definition of equal work, let's take the plan for more wider area, like not think about only genders, but also regular worker and part-timer, so that we will get better results. And as for inherency, they show turnarounds And first, the first time around, they said performance will down. The reason is that the cost to introduce 3P concept is too high to decrease performance. However, non-proof and no linkage, after plan adoption, companies productivity will increase because of increase of workers' motivation. So turnaround doesn't stand. And then as for second turnaround, productivity down because of confusion. However, they failed to look at encourage our 3P is belongs to company and company. Company and company can choose to company, and company can choose to take or not. Cross-apply QA time. Therefore, confusion itself never happen and at least never go bankruptcy. And as for disadvantage uniqueness, they said Japanese economy is improving now. However, just say the number and result, never said the reason, and also there is not knowing who is agent. Well, I'll explain some. Okay, so I'll show a case scenario. We take plan because to discriminate, to minimize discriminations between of wage and for like gender or part-time temporary worker and regular worker, and now those discrimination lose. Sorry.
Sorry to say, but time is up. Cross-examination from negative side.
So, on the advantage, you made the argument that people don't have to worry about like a lot of confusion because companies can choose to do it or not, right?
People get confused because company. Could you repeat that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. You made the argument that there isn't going to be confusion in the companies because companies can choose to do plan or not.
Yeah. Okay.
So, will companies do plan if it's going to be confusing for their employees?
Okay. I answer it because a company can, as we said, company can choose. Before company try to take a plan, they can have an investigation. They can check how their workers feel, and they can show up their plan before they shift to our plan, right? So we can avoid that confusion of people.
So, if you are at a company and you are a worker, and the company comes to you and they say that we want to decrease your salary and make you work harder, do you think the employees are going to say yes?
Well, if the salary will decrease, I would say no. But if I got the reasons, proper reason why my wage salary should be decreased, maybe I could understand. Maybe.
You'd understand, but you wouldn't vote for it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think what all this is getting to is I don't think that any company will actually adopt this, right?
Well, I'm not sure about it, sorry, but some company can try if their company taking with the result based on system is not going well, they can think another way, right? And if some company could try and make good result on using this plan system, some other company will follow to the company for this system.
Okay. Then I wanted to talk about your definitions block from the International Labor Organization, right?
Okay. Yeah.
All this evidence seemed to speak about definitions of labor, right? But no implementation of those definitions. No laws, not making laws on the definitions.
Yeah, no making laws. Yes.
Okay. So, what does this evidence, this quotes, get you in the debate round? How will you use it?
I use this for explain why we should take a broader definition of equal work, and that would give us a better result than just taking strict, tight definition.
Okay. Cool. I think that's. Thank you.
Sorry to say, but time is up. Preparation time for the negative.
Do you still want this? Okay. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready? Everyone ready? Okay. I think this debate comes down to three central issues. The first is that the plan is bad for companies. The second is that the plan is bad for workers. And the third is that the plan is bad for Japan. I'm going to talk about why it's bad for companies first. I'm sorry, I'm on case side right now, and then I will move to the disadvantage. So the affirmative's argument is that there needs to be a broader definition of what constitutes work and how we should evaluate that. Well, that's fine. That might be true, but we're saying our argument is that we shouldn't implement this plan for a few reasons. It is impossible for companies to make these types of decisions. See, companies right now already have to try to evaluate what their workers are doing and how their workers are working. And the way that they do this is results and productivity and performance, okay? If you want to increase the definition of what constitutes work, companies are going to have to be constantly looking over their employees. They're going to need people everywhere, and they're going to need to have people monitoring everything. So the example that their affirmative case talks about is, let's say I'm a manager, and I give my subordinate a lot of work to do, and he does all the work, and then I get all the credit, okay? How do you prevent this as a company? Well, the company would need to have people monitoring both the manager and the subordinate to see who's doing the actual work. So in addition to companies having to pay people to do the work, now they're going to have to pay people to sit next to those people while they're working to see the work that is being done. This is what will happen with a broader definition of equal work and productivity and the 3P system. It is impossible for companies to do this. They're having a hard enough time as it is figuring out which workers are performing well and are productive, let alone where the work is actually being done. And so we believe that this broad definition is bad for that reason. There's also no reason why there needs to be a uniform standard across different industries. Companies have existed for a long time, and they exist because they're efficient, they exist because they produce good things, and they exist because they're good at managing their employees. And so the current system of how they manage and hire and promote is already working, as evidenced by our argument that the economy is turning around, which means that they haven't proven a need for this broad definition, and it will also be very, very difficult for companies. The last thing that this will do is just further cement our argument that companies won't want to do it. If this is going to be really, really hard, so let's say Chris and I are employees, in order to make sure who's doing the work, because there's such a broad definition of what work is now, someone's going to have to sit there next to us and watch us work, which is another reason why companies won't want to do it. So now that we've talked about why the plan will be bad for companies, we're going to talk about why the plan will be bad for motivation. Now, the affirmative, bad for workers, I'm sorry. The affirmative says that their plan will increase motivation because they'll pay people more. But this isn't true, because in order to even this out, they're going to have to decrease the salary of people that are already working. If the system is going to be effective, you can't just bring everyone's pay up. You have to bring some people's pay down if they're not being as productive. So this will decrease their morale, this will decrease cohesion, and cause all kinds of problems in a company. Because as a regular worker, as a salaried employee, I make my decisions of how much to spend, how much to budget for my family, based on my paycheck. But let's say with their system, a company does work evaluations once every 6 months, okay? This means that every 6 months they do an evaluation of all of their employees. And so, this makes me very worried all the time, because I'm always being watched, I'm always being monitored, and when I'm worried, I don't work very well. So there's always someone looking over my shoulder to evaluate my work. This creates a negative work environment. It'll increase stress and increase the motivation for overwork, which is a major cause for suicide and family problems. But aside from that, every 6 months, my pay could change depending on how productive I am. And so this will mean that my paychecks are irregular, and I can't budget for my family, and I have children, and I have a spouse. And so every 6 months, my pay could change depending on how the company evaluates my productivity. And this makes me really nervous. It makes me really not confident to spend a whole lot of money, because I don't know what my next paycheck is going to be. And so the last reason why this is going to hurt productivity is because now everyone is looking at everyone else. I don't know what my friend is making. I don't know what Chris is making. I'm trying to look for what the company wants. Every 6 months, I'm trying to change what it is that I'm going to do. And so instead of worrying about my work, now I'm worrying about everyone else's work to see how much they're going to be paid, to see how this new evaluation system is going to work. And all of this combined will do a couple things. First, it will mean that workers will not vote for it. If what they say is true, that companies can put this up to a vote of the employees, no one is going to vote for this. And then the second thing is just that it will be bad overall if it actually does get implemented. So now that we've talked about why it's bad for companies and why it's bad for workers, finally, I'm going to move on to why it's bad for Japan. The disadvantage says that the economy is currently improving right now. Things are getting a little better. It really fell real bad, but now we're just starting to see signs of recovery. And they say that we don't give a reason for this change. and a number and a result. But in fact, if you look at the evidence, it says that the reason for the turnaround is government stimulus. Government stimulus, and Japan's government is offering 5% of their GDP to helping corporations, is why things are turning around. And so, while that is working, the affirmative plan does exactly the opposite by imposing a mandate or imposing a change in the corporate structure of companies, which means that companies who are currently recovering are now faced with this decision to have these unpredictable standards set by the government to increase their labor costs, to increase their payroll, and to decrease their profit. And so all of this will shatter the business confidence that is already sparking the turnaround. Thank you.
What did you say about time is up? Cross-examination from affirmative side.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
As for three central reason why taking plan is bad, you said, please could you explain the second one? Plan is bad for workers. Why is that?
Okay, so a few reasons for why it's bad for workers. The first is that it makes everyone really, really nervous because now they're constantly being evaluated at their job. And so this will increase the stress from evaluation. It will lead to overwork and to suicide, and it'll decrease the cohesion amongst workers because now they have to worry about everyone else's work and how that's being evaluated. Oh, sorry, and the last reason is because now with an evaluation system implemented for, we'll say every 6 months or every year, their paychecks are now unpredictable and irregular, and so they can't budget for their lives.
Thank you. Okay. So I want to ask you for about pay. You said after plan, workers' salary will decrease, right? Why is that again?
Well, okay, so right now some people are regular workers, some people are non-regular workers, and your contention is that some of them are productive and some of them aren't, and so they're not being paid fairly, right? So if you raise the salary of someone who is being productive and you decrease the salary of someone who's not being productive, then people's salaries will be reduced.
Oh, okay. And and also, could you please explain why taking broader definition of equal work or whatever is bad?
Sure. My main argument is that it is really impossible for companies to evaluate what work is if you expand the definition of it. So right now, it's based on performance and results, right? And when you expand it to all these other things like position and person, this is going to require more people to sit there and watch how much I'm working. And more people to evaluate my work for all these different factors of whatever the definition is. And so this will be bad for companies because now they have to hire more human resources people and labor people to do this type of monitoring. And it'll also be bad for employees because now they're constantly being watched and evaluated, which creates a negative work environment.
Okay. But if I say, because if the government makes some standards to evaluate people, maybe it will make easier to evaluate people. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No need to say, but time is up. Negative side, do you use preparation time?
Let me ask Tony.
Okay.
Good.
Now, the timekeeper welcome the first negative debate to speak within 5 minutes. The first negative speaker, please.
Okay, I will use this speech to talk about the topicality shell and the inherency shell and solvency. Our argument on the topicality shell is that encourage means to provide an incentive, and their counterinterpretation was to make something more likely to exist. I think that both of these are fine definitions, but we have a couple arguments. Our first argument is that there aren't any standards for their counterinterpretation. So when you're looking to see whose interpretation you want to prefer, you're always going to prefer the negatives because we gave you 3 reasons why it's a good definition: ground, predictability, and education. Our next argument is that they don't meet either interpretation because they're still not making something more likely to exist. They're not offering incentives. They're not offering tax breaks. You know, and they laugh it over here. Also, they don't discuss the voters at all in subpoint D. So if you are flowing this, I would encourage you to extend the voters. And and this is the completed position where we have a strong interpretation and a violation and voters. The inherency shell, I would just ask you to extend it. They don't give us any examples why the plan isn't occurring right now or how they are going to change the status quo. So I think all of that stands. On solvency, I think the most important part of this discussion of solvency is asking yourself the question, will companies do this? And when they can't prove that any companies will do it, when they tell us that, well, maybe companies and voters will, or companies and workers will vote on it, that the plan will never pass and the advantage will never occur. Additionally, please remember that there isn't any solvency because there is absolutely no standard for judging or measuring how performance in the workplace works. If you are a factory worker on a line, you can measure it by how many, things you produce. But if you work in an office, how do you compare someone who is doing customer service to someone who is doing acquisitions or supplies or inventory? How do you compare the vice president of international relations with the vice president of government relations? It seems like there's no standard to judge these. And if there isn't a standard, that means that many people can be abused, right? It dramatically increases the propensity for, or the options for people to be discriminated against. It will be very, very chaotic. Workers will constantly be worried, productivity will decrease, and it will be bad for everyone. So, those are our arguments, and thank you very much for listening to my last two speeches, and thank you.
Preparation time for the affirmative.
I'm ready. May I start? May I start? Thank you.
Firstly, I refute for the two energy speaker. He said the plan is bad for three agents. First is company, second is worker, third agent is Japanese government. However, firstly, I'll check one by one. First company. The reason the company why it's difficult to take that plan. The reason is too broad the standard, the 3P. What is under the status quo, they decide the payment by the action, the result, or normal or something. However, after plan option, there are many standards. So they should decide more and more. That's called bad effect also. That's the reason. However, on this point, the management itself is too hard generally. Therefore, that is no problem. If that is a true problem, anyway. The company manager can choose the first leader that takes 3P, and of course they choose what is the decision rule to decide the payment. Therefore, they can choose a switchable standard, so they don't get the confusion and they don't get the difficulty. Maybe better. And the secondly, they said worker. Firstly, the first reason is bad for mental anxiety, for the salary change or something. However, Japan is in preparation, critical observation hours. So even now, people have the anxiety to go jobless for cost cut or something. Many persons have such anxiety. So this argument is not unique at all. And then after plan option, the situation will change to better. And then thirdly, the not for Japanese government. However, their assumption is that now the Japanese economy is growing or something. However, my partner said before, and the disadvantage side, not unique argument, said their evidence is only said one time analysis. Therefore, we can't know the growth tendency or something Moreover, the depression itself comes from 1989 or so, and 20 years old, the depression is continuously going in now in Japan. Such situation cannot be changed too easily. So now it's depression. Therefore, the third argument, Japanese government, for Japanese government, the plan is not good, is not suitable for this plan. And then nextly, there one our speaker. As for the non-formation argument, no company follows plan. However, disadvantage on disadvantage, Japan's economy is increasing. But how about each company? Some are good, some are bad for its finance. We cannot know how many is good or how many is bad. So, some bad company will follow to plan. Therefore, follow to plan to improve their economy, their finance. So, to improve their finance, some company will take not there. Some is good. Some will take the plan, so that plan effect is there. And then the topicality. Yes, please forgive me. And then the most key point is the affirmative stance is that we can choose the company can choose the 3P itself standard, and the company can choose itself to take 3P and to standard 3P. Please keep it.
Sorry to say, but time is up. Preparation time for the negative.
Okay, I'm ready. Like I said before, this debate comes down to three central issues. And the first is that the plan is bad for companies. The second is that the plan is bad for workers. And the third is that the plan is bad for Japan. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is about topicality. We will not be going for topicality. We accept their definition that the plan might make it more likely, but we think that if that happens, it will be bad. The first reason is for companies. So, again, the argument is that broadening the definition of how to evaluate work will make it impossible for companies to do this, and it will increase their labor costs and increase the pressure on management. The affirmative says that management's job is always hard, but that doesn't mean we should make it harder. Imagine if a manager has to spend all of his time trying to figure out how to evaluate workers, having a constant evaluation, and worrying about when he'll get it wrong, because there will be times when managers will get it wrong in their evaluation. And so the solution here is not to make it harder for managers, make it harder for people to evaluate workers by expanding the definition to any number of things that are not made clear. The second reason why it was bad is that it is bad for workers. Now, their argument is that Japan is currently suffering some economic hardships and that people already have anxiety now. And we agree. But this is precisely why now is the wrong time to change the entire payroll structure of a company, because it can only increase their anxiety and make things worse. They say that equal pay for equal work will make it better, but it's not true for the following reasons. The first is that it increases stress when you have to be constantly worried about your evaluation. The second is that it could lead to abuse by the company. If the company simply wants to pay someone less, they can make up a reason during one of their performance reviews and reduce workers' pay. The third is that some people will have their pay reduced, which will make them more anxious and possibly increase the anxiety and depression and worrying about being laid off. The fourth is that it will lead to overwork because people are now so worried and stressed about their evaluations that they will push themselves to work them too hard, which is a major cause of suicide and family problems. Lastly is that the paychecks will now become irregular because people will have to think about each time they come up for review, their pay might change, which is unpredictable and makes it hard for them to plan for their families. The last reason why it's bad for workers, and there are a lot, is that it will decrease worker cohesion as everyone has to look at what everyone else is doing and figuring out, hey, did he get a raise? Did she get a raise? No, she got her pay reduced. Oh no, what did she do? And so this causes the sort of internal gossip and internal fighting and internal worry that'll make everyone in the company less productive and more agitated about their jobs. So the last reason that I want to talk about is that it is bad for Japan. So the affirmative says that we're in a recession right now, which is true. However, our evidence shows that the economy is currently improving a little bit. It's getting better. And they say we don't know which companies, but we do. That evidence talks about industrial manufacturing companies, which are the backbone of Japan's economy and the people who will be affected by these sort of the actions of the plan. And so what will happen is that businesses will have to increase their labor costs at a time where they can't afford to, at a time when the economy, or at a time when their business is just recovering a little bit, and have all the problems of low business confidence, have less to invest in research and technology, and less to build plants for, and ultimately less tax revenue for Japan. So remember, the plan is bad for companies, the plan is bad for workers, and the plan is bad for Japan. Thank you very much.
Sorry to say, but time is up. No preparation time for the county. Please come up to the stage.
Yeah, I'll show my roadmap. Firstly, well, I could finally understood what we talking about. Three concepts and three center issues. I finally understood. Maybe I can talk now. My roadmap is case side and disadvantage. Thanks for topicality anyway. Well, may I start? Okay. As for case side, okay, I'll say, I repeat, as for they said the main issue is plan is bad for company, the plan is bad for workers, and the plan is bad for Japan. Okay, I understand for some reason maybe it is bad for company and the workers, but for Japanese economy, I don't know, because we Japanese government is gonna be take the plan, right? And and some company already successed on their system. They won't have to be changed their system. So those companies can keep growing or stay their situation. So, but as my partner said, some company will getting bad or having a bad problem with paying the workers' motivation or something. So they the company will get depressed. And so for those to save those companies, we encourage new system like the 3B concept system, and like evaluate person and the position and the performance, and maybe big companies have a good economy on themselves, but some like small and middle companies maybe not. And if we try to evaluate all people in big company, maybe it's difficult as Negative said. But how about like we evaluate the workers, like 100 workers in a small company or less than 100. Maybe they can, that superior can try to evaluate correctly more easily, and so that would, and if the superior could evaluate correctly on the pay should be paid properly too, and with pay because proper evaluation based on proper evaluation, pay workers can be satisfied with it, and well, someone will get nervous, stressed because they have to work hard. I think so too, but they will know if they have an endeavor, they can, if they could improve their skills, and maybe they can make a good results, and we can think the superior will evaluate their endeavor, efforts, and also as looking at their effort, okay, they're improving their skills, they can get a higher position, and the profit for workers will be better. So workers can have a good motivation to work. Firstly, maybe depressed, but in long term, they will change the thinking. And so, for small or middle size of companies, maybe it's good to take plan. And as we said, this is encouraged. Not all companies have to follow this plan. And okay.
最後に伸ばしたのが30セントで、簡単にワーカーのジャパンがいいから簡単で、一緒にそういう範囲で。
And well, thank you. That's all.
Sorry to say, time is up.
Very good job.
Very good job.
The negative side, do you have any objection to the affirmative side?
No.
How about the affirmative side?
No.
Then I'd like to conclude this round. 10 minutes later, we have reflection of this game, so please have a break.